Welcome to another episode of Capacity. Today we're here with Cody Goff, the owner of Vilonia Metalworks. They're in Vilonia, Arkansas, in central Arkansas, and they primarily do commercial kitchen equipment, sheet metal fabrication. Welcome, Cody.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about your business.
Yeah, so third generation, small business owner. So kind of how we got our start is my grandfather started the company in 75. So
In Vilonia.
In Vilonia, yeah. Just right there north of Little Rock. So he had gone up to Wisconsin and kind of did some maintenance work for some different factories and stuff, and thought, man, you know what? I could probably go back home and do this at home. And so he moved his family, packed up, came back to Vilonia, and started. He kind of worked at some sheet metal shops around the area for a while until he got enough kind of saved up to where he could start building his own shop. And so, you know, they would work during the day, and in the afternoons, him and a couple guys and my cousin, they would get out there and just start working on the new shop. So they were building their new shop in the afternoons. A guy across the street kind of caught on to what they were doing, come by one day. He's like, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" And my grandfather was like, "Oh, well, we're putting up a sheet metal shop." And he was like, "Sheet metal shop? You couldn't do enough sheet metal if you took two Prince Albert cans and laid them open and put them side by side." He said, "That's about all the sheet metal you're going to do in Vilonia." And he ended up going on to say, he's like, "I just assume have a missile silo in my backyard than a sheet metal shop." And so, you know, it's just really cool. Just kind of hearing stories like that and just kind of seeing those humble beginnings. You know, my grandfather, just all the naysayers, you know, I mean, even now it's just so prevalent for people when they're starting businesses or trying to get into it themselves, just, you know, all the negativity that's going on with it, especially, you know, third generation business owner, a lot of negative comments, remarks, whatever. People like to sit on the sidelines and see you fail or whatever. But just to kind of see that my grandfather kind of went through the same thing. You know, he was probably in his 40s at the time, but so yeah, just kind of know, you know, some of those stories.
How'd you hear those stories? Did he tell them to you?
No. So my grandfather, he passed in 99. I was 5 or 6 years old at the time. So don't really remember much of him. Remember just a few moments, you know, here and there. But my foreman back in the day, he's now my estimator. But he's kind of shared with me a lot of those stories and things like that. He was
there from the beginning.
Yeah, he started working there when he was 18. He just turned 65 this year, so he's about to retire. But yeah, so he's got a lot of good stories to tell. But
so he's kind of like a time capsule for the whole business for you,
sure.
Basically.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself like pulling stuff out of him, being like, "Hey, how was this done before?" Like, what's your interaction with him if he knows that much about the history?
Yeah, a lot of it. You know, a lot of like the business has kind of shifted into kind of like what we're mainly producing. So now we're kind of mainly producing stainless steel kitchen equipment for fast casual restaurants. And so, but you know, in the past we've kind of done just a little bit of everything. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times like that. Well, I'll go up to his office and we'll just kind of shoot the bull and talk about stuff. And hey, you know, and sometimes I'll ask him like, "Hey, do you remember my dad doing this?" You know, and he kind of follow up with a story about it, and that would kind of help solidify any decisions that I was trying to make. You know, because in '99 when my grandfather passed, my dad had taken over. So my dad was like 36 at the time when he took the business over. And then in 2013, him and my mother both died in a vehicle accident. And so I was 20 at the time, and I just finished 2 years of college. And my dad always pressed me, you know, go to college, do what you want to do. Because my dad was forced into the business at a young age, you know, 13, 14 years old, sweeping shop, you know, which I would too. Like I go down there in the summer times and sweep and kind of help out and stuff, but was never really obligated to do so because I wasn't ever pressured into it. And so, yeah, my dad always just challenged me to kind of go and do what I wanted to do. So when that happened, I thought, I really want to finish college because nobody in my immediate family had gone to college and graduated. And so I was like, that's something I want to do. And so ended up going into college and ended up finishing college. I majored in Bible. And during that time, we kept things running at the business. Alan was a huge part in that. And a lot of those guys who were there, they'd been there for 15, 20 years. And so they really stepped up and helped bring the business along, and, all their years of just knowledge and wisdom through that really kind of helped us keep things going. And so, man, I just fell in love with the business. More so probably the people side. Love fabricating. I love welding. But I'm kind of a perfectionist. So like I would just get, man, if I didn't do a weld right or didn't clean it up right, polish it right, I get pretty frustrated. And so it was frustrating, but I got more in like the people side of things, and just, more the business setting, and just really, really love servicing people and just helping them out. And so I have two sisters, and so they were involved in business whenever my parents passed. And so I graduated college, and then a few years later ended up buying them out of the company. And
they're older than you, younger than you?
Older, yes. Yeah, they're just a few years older.
If we zoom back a little bit, you were 5 years old when your dad took over the business. What memories do you have of the company, of your dad in that period of time?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because, just going there and seeing those guys growing up. I mean, I was a little towhead running around, just blonde-headed boy just running around, and, coming down there getting snacks out of the snack drawer, just doing those sorts of things. So, I remember my dad was very involved in the business. So we would also do like HVAC. So we'd have like an HVAC division and the custom fab side. And so he kind of had the HVAC kind of more his baby. So he's really involved in that. And so like he'd go out there, work with the guys, things like that. I don't remember just a whole lot. Like I wasn't really paying attention to that. It just wasn't clicking to me. It probably wouldn't have clicked until mid-20s, like really paying attention to stuff. So I really wish I'd have paid more attention a little bit, but I just remember sometimes in the afternoons, the guys would leave at 3:30, and if I was there in the afternoons or come home from school, our house was right up the road from the shop. So I'd just get home and walk down the shop and see what everybody was doing. My dad being there with his feet propped up, with his hat down, just taking a snooze, And now having kids of my own, which I don't do that, but like having kids of my own, I'm like, oh man, I kind of understand like
being exhausted.
Yeah, like what he was doing, He's like, because when you go home, it's like it's game on again. You got the kids, and it's it starts over. And so yeah, he would just kind of take some mental breaks like that, and I just thought that was pretty funny.
What about the folks you have in the shop? This estimator guy that you talked about. What memories does he have of you?
Yeah, I mean, so he'll tell me stories every now and then, just me coming down, and as I got older too, like 10, 11, I would in the summer times kind of go down there and sweep a little bit, for some cash. I'd want to go do something, and my mom said, well, just go down there and help Dad. I'm sure you find something for you to do. And so I'd go down there and sweep and stuff. But yeah, I'm sure it's interesting for him, to kind of see the thing come full circle, and just that perspective of now, because I have three boys, 6, 3, and 1 year old. And so I'm just kind of thinking about that. So whenever you walk in our office, I've got 3 big posters on the wall. The first one's a picture of my grandfather standing at his desk, or he's sitting at his desk. And then the next one is a picture of my dad. He was probably 18 or 19 years old. He was outside saw cutting something on this trailer. And then the next picture is a photo of me and my dad, and I was probably 5 at the time, and I was wearing the work uniform. He was wearing his work uniform. So, when you come in, you immediately get some of that family history background when you walk in. So it's kind of cool to see, now I'm thinking of things like that with my boys, thinking about doing, just kind of recreating that same picture.
So when you went off to college, did you expect to come back and work in the shop? Did you have another career in mind that was derailed? Like, what was your perspective as you left home to go to school?
Yeah. So I went to a nearby college. And so I would go to the shop, work part-time, and I'd primarily do, I'd fabricate really. I was one of the guys at that point, working 30 hours, as much as I could, while I was going to class and stuff. But no, like during the initial of it, really didn't know what I would be doing, as far as, business wise, but, I feel like I was called to like, vocational ministry. I feel like the Lord's kind of guided me in that path. So I was trying to pursue that, but I think just getting the constant reassurance of like, hey, it's okay. Like if you don't choose this path, because you can still share and lead people to Jesus through the business world too. Like it doesn't have to be confined to one thing. Right. And so,
And your folks are giving you that reassurance.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And so that was just kind of back in my mind, because I think kind of when I made that transition, I heard a few people, say, "Oh man, I really wish he would have followed what God had called him to do or whatever." And that's just not true, because nobody really knows what that is, right? And so it's just, it's just between you and him. And so that was just kind of that reassurance that I had, that it's like, you know what, I really love people. I love these guys here. It's something I want to do.
You said your sisters are involved in the business already. Was the expectation that they would, continue to run it as well long term?
Yeah, I don't know. They weren't. I think one of them, my oldest, I think she had kind of came in here and there doing some work and things like that, kind of before my parents' passing. But I mean, we were kind of all just really thrown into it at one time, and so I don't know that they had the passion that I found that I had in it, which is kind of cool, because like we had a few years there to kind of figure it out for ourselves. Like, hey, what do we want to do? And the more I thought about, the more I was drawn back to the business. I think maybe the more they thought about it, they had some different careers. I mean, they quit their current jobs and came in and started working in the business. And so I think a part of them was longing for, what they wanted to do originally. And so, be stay-at-home moms. One of my sisters is a esthetician. And so, they were pulled in that direction. So I think, when we had that conversation of like, hey, I would love to take over. Is this something that y'all are okay with, and they're like, are you sure? Do you really want to do this? I was like, yeah, I think I do. And so.
How long did it take for you to get sure?
I guess about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, about 5 years.
Was it gradual, or was it like one day you're like, oh, actually, I see something here I didn't before? I
think it was gradual. I don't think it was right off the bat. But it's just funny, you don't, when you kind of get thrown into something, you don't really know, you got to get down in the weeds and kind of start figuring stuff out and things. And so the more I got in there and started figuring stuff out, just like with the business and kind of what we were doing, the more interested that I got in it, and the more I could understand a little bit to go, hey, this is something I could see myself doing long term.
What did it feel like to learn the non-shop side of things? You were one of the guys, you were doing fabrication work, you're learning how to read P&L and like a balance sheet,
right.
Understanding cash flow and estimating and margins. Like, what did that feel like to you?
Yeah, it was a lot. But I've always surrounded myself with wiser people than myself. I have a business coach. One of my cousins, he has a meat processing company. They have over 100 employees. Unfortunately, he passed a couple years ago due to COVID. But he was one of my mentors as well. So kind of more so on the people side of things. How do I lead and grow with people and allow them to thrive in my business and things like that. So he was a huge help in that. But my executive coach, I called him, shortly after purchasing my sisters out. Kind of told him what was going on. Here's areas I need help. And so he'd pretty much find people, that I could work with, whether it was on the finance side or, different things like that. So I've got a lot of different support floating around that I really just leaned on. I've done a little bit of my own study, right? But a lot of that is counsel from others.
These folks that you met that help you, your coach, were these people that you were introduced to, or how'd you find them, and how'd you get to trusting them? Because what I hear a lot is there are a lot of people that have advisors and coaches and mentors, but they don't really use them enough, or they don't really trust them, or they don't.
Yeah.
They want to figure things out themselves. Like, how did your relationship with them start, and why has it been so valuable to you?
Yeah, that's good. I think it kind of started more like on that corporate level, right? And then the more and more of just talking with one of my coaches was just, honestly, I just need to bounce stuff off people. Like facts are facts, numbers don't lie. You can get into that stuff. A lot of times at the end of the day, it comes down to gut on some of that stuff. That is a percentage there that, where decisions have to come from. So a lot of that was me just getting in there and having conversations with them, of just like, hey, this is going on. Here's how I think I'm going to handle that. Or here's, what experience do you have? And I might listen to them tell me a story of something similar. And then that way I've got a couple options there to weigh, and then that's how I would generally make my decision. We just kind of bring all that counsel in, a lot of opinions, people that have done it before, and then try to make my decision based off of that. But as far as like, finding the coaches, things like that, just online research, reviews, just, trying to find stuff, talking to other business owners. Hey, have you ever used anybody like that before? And just trying to see, because manufacturing is somewhat of a small world. So once you kind of get in there, everybody kind of knows everybody. You get in those little niches like that, and that's just kind of what it seems like. So, but no, that's how I found them.
They say that we learn the most through our failures. Are there any like big things that happened to you or decisions that you made that you really learned from?
So it's interesting, and I don't know what you feel like, or the box that you put failures in. A lot of times I feel like that's more the lines of like dollars, like a financial decision. And like, that's kind of how I've always thought of it as, but it's not really just about the money, right? Like somebody taking out a loan might be a risk for them, and if that piece of machinery or whatever didn't work out, then that could be called a failure. But I think some bigger risk you could say that I have kind of taken early on, that may not be considered what you could fail from, but it's just cultural shifts, trying to get the right people in the right seats, and so over the last couple of years, we've really been, when we go to do job searches, we're looking for people that are like-minded like us, that are positive. You get guys in there that are eager, just super eager to learn, and they're just an open book, and they've got great attitudes. Those are kind of guys and girls that we're looking for, kind of come up on our team. And so in the past, it's not how it always was. It was really based off of skill, expertise, those types of things.
That's what you inherited when you took over? Like, right. That was the culture then?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
so, how long did it take before you felt comfortable thinking about changing that culture?
Honestly, it was a guy by the name of Brandon Wimberly. He was a sales guy for a vendor of ours in Stainless. And he come by one day and we just got to talking. He's a little bit older than me. We just got to talking, and he's like, man, I really like what you're doing here. And he ended up calling me that afternoon and was like, hey, man, are you looking for somebody like in a sales lead or business development lead? And I was like, man, I've been thinking about it. I think I'm ready to do something like that. And so after talking with him for months, he ended up coming on the team. And he was a big advocate in that, like, hey, nothing changes if nothing changes, a Theo Vaughn quote, but it's true. It's like, you have to make that step. If you don't, you're going to stay, you're going to stay in that same spot, obviously. But he was a big advocate in that, of me telling him, hey, this is my vision. This is what I would love to see the company go. And then he would kind of come up with different ways to figure out how we could do that. And then we would meet on it. And so we did that for a couple of years, honestly, just to kind of get our path to success nailed down and what that would look like. And culturally, what does that look like? Machinery wise, what does that look like? So during that time is when we moved out of our current shop into a new facility. It's like, hey, if we're going to kind of change this, why don't we change scenery, And being at the old shop, I really never did feel like it was mine. I always felt like still kind of working for my dad, which is great. Like, I love the business, but I made the decision myself to stay in the business. Unlike my dad, he was forced into it. And I think probably later on, I didn't have the conversation with him, but I think he enjoyed it. And I think he probably would have ended up choosing that. But I don't know. I didn't know it was hard in that. But for me, I had some time, 5-year span to kind of figure out, is this what Cody wants to do? And having that time to kind of reflect and make that decision, I feel like, okay, well, now this is something that I want to do. It's not that I got drug in here or they told me at a young age I had to be here, right? Like, I had time to think about it. And so I wanted to make it my own, but still honor their legacy, at the same time. And so we bought a facility that was just right up the road from our current one that had been for sale for a few years, bought it up and about 25,000 square feet. We don't occupy all of it. We've got some renters in there, coffee shop and a little event space going on. But yeah, it's great. It's heated and cooled. We have great office space now. A lot of room for different new machinery, things like that. So it's really helping us get ready for growth that we're, expecting in the restaurant industry. And so, yeah.
When you change a culture, you get revolts, you get pushback. People don't want to change, right? Even if things aren't perfect, people typically value the comfort of being able to predict what tomorrow is going to look like, even if it's not great. What was that process like for you? What did it feel easy for you? Was it difficult? Like, what did you go through to change that culture?
Yeah. So definitely not easy. I'm an Enneagram 9, so I avoid confrontation at all costs most of the time. Recently, I really try to lean into that to fight that battle internally. But there's a quote out there. I don't know who says it, but they say like the problem with communication is thinking that it's already been had. And so I would think these things up in my head and be like, I might think it for 2 weeks or 2 months, I'm like, all right, this is the direction we're going. And I'd already amped myself up and like, I'm sold, but I forgot to sell my team on it. Like I forgot to give them that vision of like, hey, this is where we're going. It's okay. It's okay to have questions. So I think during that transition of doing that, I could have led in a little bit more wiser way, I just don't think I had some of that experience already to be able to do that. So a lot of the team that we had, we don't have anymore. And I think just some of that, like not clarity of vision and not allowing people to kind of get comfortable, you know what I'm saying, in that change.
So you're saying that you think that had you done it differently, they might still be with the team?
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, because I think, I think, if people want to, I think they can change. But I think, but you're right, like if any prediction's a good prediction a lot of times, and so if they're not fully understanding that, like it may take people longer to understand that than others. And I think maybe that's kind of some of what had happened and just a blurriness of not correlated vision correctly. So yeah, I think a little bit of that could have been different.
Usually for some transition like that to be successful, some folks have to really buy into it and help you out. Who are those people for you? Like, who are the people that kind of got it, even though you might not have communicated it perfectly?
Yeah. Well, definitely Alan. He's been with us for 47 years. Definitely him. He's just always was there to support me. And if he didn't agree with something I was doing, he would kind of say his piece about it in a way, and then I would take that to heart and try to figure out how I deal with that and things like that. But yeah, no, it was definitely Alan. He's been a good definition of what it means to ride for the brand, so to speak. So he's been a big advocate for me for that.
Were there any things that you learned about balancing out feedback from people, but still keeping the integrity of what you want to create? Because you hear that a lot from business owners. You have to do a job. You have to drive the company forward, but you also have to take into account feedback. How have you learned to balance those things out?
It is a balance. And whether or not, which one's on the side of the pendulum, really, I guess just depends on how much you believe in your vision, So if you set the vision and you truly believe in it, then, a lot of the naysayers or a lot of the, whatever, it gets distorted, it gets blurred and your vision gets brighter and you keep moving forward. And the people that want to be with you, that believe in it, that you start recognizing them sooner. Right. And then now you can march forward into this new vision. It's just kind of building that boat, building it the right way and getting in it and going, and not having somebody when you're building that boat and somebody's down there at the floor of the boat poking holes in it, the whole time. And so yeah, I think it's just really just truly believing in your vision.
While you're, there's always going to be naysayers. You said earlier that you are a type of person that avoids confrontation. how do you motivate yourself to overcome that? Like, what do you do in your head to kind of get over the biases that you have?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, the first thing is when you have people is to build that trust. And so for me, it's, I love relationships. I love people. And so I can develop a relationship and have a mutual trust with somebody. And so for me, that's what helps me going into it. Cause I'm like, you know, if I'm having a conversation with you and it's going to be tough, but I've already developed that trust and I love you as a person and I care for you and I want the best for you, right? Then that confrontation kind of comes from a different way. You know, it's a more loving way, a non-abrasive way. Sometimes it doesn't always come out the way that I would like it to come out, you know, and then you're doing a play on words, trying to figure out what you said, what you shouldn't have said, whatever, right? But really it's just developing that trust. And I think with any team, any business, you know, you can have state-of-the-art facility, you can have the best machinery ever, whatever. But if you're not investing in your people on a personal level and you don't really understand who they are, what makes them tick, you know, things like that, then your culture gets tainted and you can't exceed the new heights, you know. And so that's kind of what we're doing now is we're taking more of that approach, you know, of just really trying to invest in our people and have those conversations with them. And hey, what are your goals? You know, and they'll tell us a goal for company. Like it might be, hey, I want to learn the press brake better, or I want to do this. And like, those are great. I love that. But also like, I want to know their personal goals. Like, what are you trying to achieve in life? You know, cause like we're all in this thing together. And, you know, we're spending more time with them during the day than we are our families at home. You know, we spend more time. So really, in order to kind of surround yourself by positive people, like-minded people really helps. You know, at the end of the day, when you go home, you feel re-energized, refreshed because, hey, these people are fighting the battle with me. So it makes a huge difference.
In your philosophy, do you think those people are people that you find? Like, is it about selecting the right people? Is it about developing them? Or is it about weeding, getting rid of people that shouldn't be there? Like which one of those things is more important, or what how do you think about that?
Yeah. I don't really know. I don't think there's a right answer there. I think you should foster as much as you can, you know, foster that culture, foster what it means to work at VMW, right? And lead by example. Like it starts with the leader first, you know, he's got to set the tone for that. He's got to be the one leading out there. He's got to follow the core values. He's got to do all that. And so that's probably the first approach I would say, you know, try to get people kind of going that way. But at the end of the day, you know, if you're driving down the road and your car gets a flat tire, are you going to keep driving on that flat tire? You know, so at some point you got to pull off on the side of the road, change that tire. Cause if not, you're going to run into bigger problems down the road. You know, that tire might blow, you might be right on the wheel, something happens to the axle, whatever. Right. And so there are times for that. I don't have the answer though. I wish I did, but
do you think that being someone that tends to avoid conflict encourages you to try to help people for longer than you should?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, it does for sure. Yeah. Cause you always want to see somebody come around, like, not necessarily just like being afraid of having that conversation, but just really wanting, cause like, as a leader, the visionary, like you're seeing things far beyond tomorrow. And so when you know good's coming, or, you know, like, hey man, we just closed this new deal with this client, it's going to open the doors tremendously. And like, it's not only going to affect my life, but it's going to affect my guy's life, you know? So when you're doing things like that, like, yeah, you definitely want to get with your guys and cheer them on and keep pushing them to the finish line. So yeah, I mean, there is some of that for sure.
How many years has it been now since you bought your sisters out?
I think 5 years, 4 years, something like that. 4 years, maybe.
So we've talked a lot about culture. What other changes have you made that you think have been really impactful to the business?
Really just kind of trying to narrow down our customer base.
Why is that important?
A good book out there is called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz. Really just talks about, you know, you can get really good at one thing. When you're doing several things, it's harder to get good at. And in our labor force around the area, it's difficult to find maybe the people that were wanting to fit our culture that are able to do some of the custom things and stuff that you need years and years experience for. And so to me early on, that scared me. And so I really wanted to kind of shift to doing something that was more kind of repetitive. We can bring some guys in, they're excited about life, want to get their hands dirty, care about the company, care about their futures, right? And get them in there and have them learn a skill set. And so, something that we kind of talked about, me and a couple of guys there at the shop, is like, hey, what could we develop some kind of night class, like 2 nights a week, and have guys come in and they may pay a tuition or whatever, and they come in, maybe they're in high school, right? Or maybe they're working at another place or something, but they want to come in and get more knowledge, and we can train them on our machinery. We can train them on our processes. And this is how we weld this seam. This is how we polish this seam, kind of get them in there. And then, if they end up coming to work for us and say they're there for 6 months or a year, then maybe we pay back their tuition or something like that. So we've kind of talked about some of those ideas, just kind of get some guys in there, get them familiar with what we do, our processes, things like that, because it's harder and harder to find guys out there that have the trade and skill set that we need to have in order to produce our product. So really just have a refined training deal.
Was it scary to kind of narrow the focus? You're going to lose some customers, lose some jobs. You might pick up new ones, but there's always a transition period.
Yeah. And it is. And it came in the time that we actually, when we were looking at Fulcrum and going to onboard, it was a time where we were like, hey, we really want to get and partner up with a software that's going to carry us to that next level. Which one is that going to be? And so we decided on Fulcrum, right? And so we're not to the point to where we're utilizing it to its full capacity. But we knew in order to get there, we have to start somewhere, right? And so, but yeah, it was super scary though, because the first thing we did is we cut out any walk-ins. So, we were a small fab shop for years. Farmer would come down the road, hey, I need my bush hog repaired. We'd throw a welding hood on, go repair it. Now, the thing might catch on fire and you're having to put it out, and then you just burnt hoses, and now you've got $500 worth of hoses you got to replace, stuff like that has happened before. But once we started kind of telling people no, just people in the community would get a little upset and stuff. But maybe they were kind of unsure of like where we were kind of headed. But yeah, doing that and kind of seeing that loss of what you feel like is revenue going away, I think it opens up the door for more opportunities. If you're constantly involved with trying to make restaurant equipment work for different owner groups, right? And you're in that world for a long time, then when you get that new customer in and they have a similar question, you can answer it really fast. Like you have the answers for that. When you're trying to do service every Tom, Dick, and Harry, it's not as easy. And so one of our big things is we want to provide an environment where our customers thrive and our team thrives. So how do we do that? Well, they're thriving more if we make this thing our thing. And so that's kind of helped solidify the bad gut, the churns in your gut that tell you, is this what we're supposed to be doing? But I think just kind of leading with that mindset kind of helps with that.
It takes more courage to make those decisions that your gut doesn't agree with.
Right.
Was your team on board? Were there people that are like, hey, we're a little slow. Why don't we do some of this stuff still?
Yeah, for sure. And then some of that stuff, you kind of have to read it for what it is. If you have to keep the lights on. So some of that stuff at the end of the day, we might do a handful of something, we get slow or something. But a lot of times when we're getting slow, we're making the shop more lean. We're going over the shipping and receiving area and we're straightening that up and we're getting it set up and prepared. We're going to our workstations and we're sorting clamps. We're making sure every spot has a place. And so that's generally what we're doing when we, reach our slow points and stuff like that, which is still painful because, we've never sent any guys home for being slow. We promise them work every week. But yeah, so it is tough, but I think just that constant reassurance of the vision where we're going, I think it makes it easier for those guys to kind of banter together and just kind of hit the ground running, whether we have product coming out or not.
Do you think that over time, as you make this one focus stable, good, that you're going to add stuff in the future to kind of go broad again? Or are you pretty committed to just really doing this super well forever?
I would say pretty committed to doing this thing for a long time. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great market. People are always needing food, on the go, quick, whatever. And I think COVID kind of proved that too. You didn't have the dine-ins like you had during COVID, but people still they wanted somebody else to cook their food, and so you need a kitchen to do that. So I think it's a great market to be in. There's a lot of fast and growing food chains out there, not only food, but drinks shops too, coffee shops, things like that are popping up all over the place. And so really trying to make that our focus and get with those guys and, provide that service over time that they're getting the same thing every time. McDonald's didn't make their claim to fame on the best burger ever. But what their claim to fame is like they can get the same quality burger no matter where they're at in the country
or in the world.
That's kind of what we're aiming to do is have that good turnaround time, making sure that product's consistent over time. You take out a lot of guesswork and things like that for your clients when you're doing that. And it's kind of like that Amazon world that we live in now. It's like, well, if I can just go to this place, I know it's going to be delivered on time and I know it's not going to be damaged.
Sure.
So that's kind of what we're aiming for.
As you focus, do you find that certain people on your team, their skills are more important? Certain people, their skills are less important? Like, did it shift the dynamic of the team in general and who you're looking for?
Yeah, it did for sure. Yeah, I would say so. Everybody kind of has their thing that they feel like they're the best at, and kind of being the leader and helping guide them to kind of figuring out what that is a fun process to be a part of, because you kind of get to see exactly what they're passionate about. A lot of times what they're super passionate about, ties into their work too. So, but yes, I mean, as far as the shift going from commercial stainless, it provides kind of that certain skill set that might be a little different from like the structural guy, right? He's using rod to weld up the platform versus he's using a TIG torch, for the stainless stuff. So, but yeah, I think there's been like a shift there as far as just like the labor that we're trying to go after and look for and the skill sets and things like that based off of the transition.
If you were to kind of have all three generations of shop owners, your grandfather, your father, and yourself, look at the business now, what perspectives do you think they would have that would be different than yours?
Yeah. So I try not to think about that a lot. I have these reoccurring dreams that I show up to work and my dad is back in his office and he never talks to me during these dreams. And I come in and I'm freaking out. I've got anxiety and I'm like, is he looking at what I'm doing? Like would he approve what's going on? He's not saying anything, which is funny because my dad was not a man of many words, but when he did speak, you wanted to listen to him. Right. And with those dreams are just funny to me. And I wake up and like my heart's pounding, and it's like, oh, I wonder what today's going to be like, like how did that change what I was going to do today? I often think about that. Alan kind of reassures me of that a little bit of like, hey, you're doing a good job. Your grandfather and dad be proud of you, things like that. And I've got some, support that kind of give me those reassurances and things like that. But I remember the first bigger job that we took after their passing, and we did an install job for a walk-ons restaurant. And we were installing the steel and all this stuff and kind of a little bit out of our realm of what we would normally do. And we're running back and forth to a town that was probably an hour and a half up the road and trying to install this thing and come back. And I was just like, man, my dad would have never let me handle this job. Like never would have let me handle the job. And it's just interesting what you'll do in certain times. There's certain times to rise, certain times to sit down. Let somebody else do it. And but that was one of those times where I had to rise up, and so that also brought me kind of my rite to passage into manhood. Of losing my dad, and so so just having to push through that, push those hard times, not having him to lean on, and just trusting in myself, to do the right thing.
Did being in the business help you grieve his loss? Did it make it harder? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, I think it made it easier. I think it made it easier. I also took their house. So the house I grew up in, I was still living there in college when they passed. Ended up taking the house. I actually met my wife a couple weeks before my parents left on vacation. So my wife never got to meet my parents.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, we ended up getting married, and we moved in to their house, and we kind of made it our own, things like that. So it's just, it's crazy to see. I have 3 boys, and they're growing up in each of our bedrooms, same house and same business. And my wife actually comes in and she does some kind of bookkeeping and pays bills and stuff for us and things like that. And she'll come in and our 1-year-old will be right there in the car seat. And it's really cool to kind of see that come full circle like that.
So what is your vision for the future as it relates to your kids, your boys? Your dad was forced into the business. He wanted you to choose for yourself. You got to choose for yourself. Do you think that was the right choice? Do you think that you should have had more experience with the shop when you were younger? How are you evolving that transition to the next generation, or is there going to be one?
Yeah, that's good. I definitely wish I would have quizzed my dad a little bit more, paid more attention to what was going on, of course. That didn't happen for a reason, I guess. But I asked my almost 6-year-old the other day, I said, what do you want to do when you grow up? When you become daddy's age, what do you want to do? And he says, I want to work at the shop. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, we're putting a welding hood on you then, we're probably gonna need another welder. So, it's really cool to hear that. I'm not one to pressure anybody into doing anything. But what I will provide my kids is a sound mind, and just represent kind of the business and as best as I can. And I'd love for them to take over, and it'd be a 4th generation, of course. I don't know who wouldn't, but no, it won't be something I'll force on them. But we'll definitely have conversations around it, and I'll push them to be more business minded. Though that is one thing I wish I would have been more early on.
Instead of like shop minded.
Yeah, it'll probably be more entrepreneurial minded. I still want them to get out there and learn the ropes, work out in the shop. I think that's crucial to being able to understand your processes and understand the people that are working for you and things like that. But yeah, definitely kind of train them up with that entrepreneurial mindset. And because, right after college, but in 2010, 11, it was go to college. I think now we're kind of making more of a shift to maybe college isn't the thing. So what trade can I get in? I think we're kind of seeing a little bit of that where guys and girls are starting to kind of look at how can I just get plugged into the marketplace now versus in 4 or 5 years when I'm in debt up to my eyeballs.
Do you think that as you bought out your sisters, this is now your company, or are their kids, your kids' cousins, are they going to be involved? Like, how do you think about the legacy of the business? Is it for your whole family, or have you changed it enough that it's really yours now?
I feel like it's really mine now. Yeah, I would love, so my oldest sister, her son's 10. That'd be pretty cool to see him kind of come up. And, I would still like to kind of keep it very much family oriented. One of my cousins who actually worked for my dad, his son is now in high school, and he's kind of said some things like, hey, I want to come work for you at the shop, in the summers and stuff like that. And so I think it would be kind of cool to kind of bring some of that back in, and just kind of have that family atmosphere back.
And so we're recording this, we'll put it on the internet. You'll get a copy of it. What message do you have for your future self? Like, what do you hope the you of 10 years from now will still be doing?
I think it was Matthew McConaughey who said it, but he said, and he said, my hero is me 10 years from now. And 10 years from now, when I get to that spot, his hero again will be him in 10 more years. And so I don't think we ever reach that point of what your goal or who your hero is. I don't think we ever achieve that or obtain that. It's something that it's just a gradual process. I was talking to a buddy the other day, and we were talking about just how crazy it is sometimes to be in business and be an entrepreneur, and how crazy it is for people to fight, whether it's UFC or boxing and things like that. What's interesting about that is, if there was never a bell to be rung, would those guys still be in the ring? Like, would they fight to their death? And so probably not. But in business, there is no bell. There's nobody ringing it telling you, hey, bud, you did a good job today. That's exactly what you should have done, because nobody's got the exact thing figured out. But in business, we're in a boxing match the whole time, and we're dying. We're waiting for somebody to ring the bell, and nobody's going to ring it. And so you have to get comfortable with and knowing that. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's what it is. And so, just, constantly trying to pursue greatness, trying to stay in there. Cause you get hit on one cheek, you're turned to the other cheek, and, it's a fight. And so, yeah, you just gotta be uncomfortable with not hearing a bell. But I thought it was interesting, because we think those guys are crazy, but the match is going to end. Like, they're trying to hold out until that bell gets rung.
Well, congratulations on all the progress and
appreciate it.
Advancing the company that your grandfather started. There's a lot of meaning there and a lot of value in keeping things going like that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yes, sir.